Talking About Horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in to episode number 25 of Talking About Horses. In these broadcasts, I try to bring you some of the best in the industry for tips, insights, and stories. You can listen at home, at work, in the car, or even in the saddle through Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, or directly from our website at pkhorsemanship.com. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by my friend Jillian Kreinbring. I've been waiting for this episode for quite a while. Jillian has been working with horses her entire life as a trainer, competitor, and educator. Jillian's work with horses draws upon classical dressage principles and her roots in the Western horse arena, as well as from her equine biomechanics education. She actively studies with Manolo Mendez, Peggy Cummings, Stephanie Millman, and the late Mark Russell. Jillian makes decisions about what to apply in training, lessons, and lectures by determining if it's in alignment with the horse and human biomechanics and their mental well-being. She believes the deepest and most insightful lessons come from the horses themselves. Jillian, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome, Patrick. It is totally my pleasure and honor.
Oh, well, thank you. So now what I read as a bio there, just from knowing you, I know is really nothing of a bio. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. So for the folks that are listening that maybe haven't met you or don't know much about your biography, do you want to go a little bit deeper for us and maybe start, if you would, at the beginning? How did you get started with horses?
I was very lucky because my whole childhood evolved around horses. So I was born into a horse family, and I had the good fortune of always being surrounded by people who loved horses, people who worked within the industry. And, you know, when I was very young, I was just a little barn rat. My family, we did a lot of trail rides, and, you know, we spent every single weekend at a sale barn, and we had hundreds of horses that we would buy and sell that came on and off the property. It was an idyllic childhood, riding ponies all day long. I was the only child, so really my only friends were the horses.
And where was it?
In Iowa.
In Iowa, okay.
Great Midwest. So, and then a little bit later in my life, at the ripe old age of 8, there was a gentleman who came into my life. His name was Beat Kinsel, and he boarded a few horses at our farm in Iowa, and he started to introduce me to showing competitively in the Western world. And so I owe a lot of my younger years to the Kinsels for teaching me a tremendous amount. And then later on, maybe 3 or 4 years later, we became good friends with a horseman named Glenn Meyer and his wife, Joanne. And they helped us delve a little bit more into the show world, and we started showing paint horse and quarter horse, and during that time I met J.R. Reichert and had the good fortune as a 14-year-old to be his working student for a year, and went out on the road competing with him. And then I think when I was 16, I officially took in my first training horse from Kinsel Paint Horses, and I had a really nice mare that came into training, and we competed her, and we were very successful with her show record. And it just never really stopped, even though my parents had maybe hoped it would. And it's still going.
There you go. It's still going. You got bit with the bug, and you never got rid of it, right?
I never got rid of it, and you know, it was just really a great childhood. I did, you know, go to college, and for a very short period of time, I had aspirations of, you know, becoming a professional with a job that would help me afford my horse habit, and well, that didn't last very long. And I went ahead and just devoted myself to my passion and my love, and I feel so grateful for that, to have this passion. and to do what I love every single day.
It is a blessing, isn't it?
It really is.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so competition was a very big part of my childhood, and I after I graduated from college, I was offered a head training position at a quarter horse ranch, actually, in Germany, and that was a fantastic opportunity for me because it was there that I started to be introduced to more of the classical principles of work and applying that to Western horses. And then the competition world just started to kind of eat away at me because I was seeing a lot of things in the industry that just didn't settle well with me in terms of a value system.
Okay.
And so I moved back to the United States, and I had the ambition to go to graduate school, and I knew I wanted it to be involved with horses, but I didn't quite know what my direction was. Well, while I was waiting to figure that piece of my life out, I continued to train some horses, and I was involved in a riding accident, and I broke my back and my leg, and that was a real turning point for me in the horse industry because up to that point I was kind of an arrogant little brat. I really thought I knew a lot more than what I did, and so that accident was kind of a gift because I realized I really didn't know a whole lot about horses, even though they had been my whole life up to that point. So that set me on a completely different journey about, learning about horses, learning who they are as a species, both mentally, physically, and spiritually, and that guided my research at the university. And so, for the last 15 years now, I just try to be beginner's mind every day that I go work with horses and continue to learn about how to support them and to be the best steward that I can be, both physically and mentally.
Gotcha. I find it interesting that it was kind of an accident that you say that changed your thinking and helped you realize you didn't maybe know as much as you thought you did. And I feel like that's almost always the case, right? That's almost always what draws us to find more knowledge like that, either inspiration or desperation, right?
Yeah.
What do you mind me asking what happened and why did it cause you to sort of look back on yourself and your knowledge or awareness?
Yeah, I think the way that I was raised around horses was based in the paradigm of training from a more dominant perspective, subjugating horses. You will do this, you will do that. Young horses, weanlings, yearlings, 2-year-olds, and just really subjecting them to training practices that took any and if all choices away from the horse. And I don't mean to bastardize that paradigm, because I think we all come to thinking about the horse world differently at different times in our life. And of course, my accident was the catalyst for me to change and to explore what other avenues were available to me at that time in my life. And the accident was I had a horse in training, very nice horse, a 6-year-old stallion, and the clients, wonderful people, had a buyer for that particular horse. And they had a particular training goals for that individual, so they could present that horse for sale. So the owner came to take a video, and I was riding in an open field, probably not the safest situation, with a 6-year-old stallion that didn't have a lot of time under saddle. And they were videoing, and in the past that field had been used for farming, so there were old furrows in the land, although they were all grown up in grass. And so as she started to video me, I was riding out in that big open field, and the walk was great, the trot was great, and I picked him up into a canter, and I dropped a rein. And when you're presented with a little situation like that, your mind goes through all different types of scenarios. And had I been in an arena, it wouldn't have been a big deal to reach down and grab the rein. This unfortunate circumstance, we were about five strides away from an overgrown barbed wire fence. It was all grown up and grass. So I opted to just step off and do an emergency discount. But because the land was not flat, when I landed, my ankle rolled over and snapped and broke. And then I slipped several times, and that's what caused the injury.
Gotcha.
And so, as I said, so I was laying there in this tall grass, and shock can be an amazing thing. When you get injured, nature has an incredible way of soothing the body, even though it's in immense pain. And that's really when I realized, when I was laying there with that injury, it just dawned on me that, wow, everything that I had done with horses up to that point was absolutely 100% driven by my ego.
Mm.
And so it was the opening and a new beginning for me, although it was very painful, both physically and emotionally.
Right. Well, and there's quite a process, I think, that we go through when we're faced with that, like you said, physically and emotionally, right? You had the physical healing that you had to go through, but then the emotional side of things, that's definitely one that takes, I think, a while. You can have a decision like that in a light bulb moment, or in the blink of an eye like that, but for some of us, I imagine there's a lot of letting go of things that we thought we knew.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because it was as if the universe opened up to me at that moment, because just the right teachers came into my life at that time. The right people came into my life to help direct me on a new path. And I'm forever grateful to those people like Peggy Cummings, who really made me think about and really made me see the world of horsemanship from a completely different way, from the horse's perspective, not just about what was good for the horse, but what was good for the rider, both equine biomechanics and human biomechanics, and how those two things need to work together in synchronization to have the most harmonious relationship.
Yeah. Well, it does. It makes perfect sense, because if one's not working, the other won't be effective, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Peggy was the teacher then that first came into your life to kind of help you get on track then?
Yes, and it was so symbolic because I was healing from my injury, and I was at the time at the university, and I was still struggling with my primary focus for what my research was going to be. And I was working for a farm at that time in Wisconsin called Booster Farm, and they have Hungarian warm bloods. And the woman who was running that farm, Pat Vogel, had asked me, she says, I have a woman who's coming into town to teach lessons. Would you be interested in taking a lesson? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. And so I was getting ready for my lesson. I was at the university, and it was on 9/11/2001. And I had just watched the Twin Towers fall.
Wow.
As I hopped in my little car and I drove to the farm. And so it was so symbolic because my world was wrapped in two completely different ways.
Yeah.
So Peggy, she really brought just so much awareness about my own self-healing, my own self-care, and how that was equally as important to the horse-human equation.
Wow, that's fantastic. And now you've gone through Peggy's program, and am I understanding right, you're a connected riding instructor also?
Yes, I am. So I've been studying with Peggy since 2001, and now I am a connected riding instructor. So pretty much everything that I teach is always going to be reflected back into the foundation of what I've learned from Peggy.
Okay, fantastic. Can you tell for any of our listeners out there that maybe don't know, and even for my own knowledge, I know I have Peggy's book, and admittedly, I haven't yet gotten around to reading it. I have a whole suitcase in my car full of books that I have yet to read.
I know. I have told myself I cannot buy any more books until I read at least one.
Right? Yeah. But once you read one, you can buy 10 more.
I know. I'm such a hoarder. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad to hear that I'm not the only one in the boat.
On your load now.
Oh goodness, that's great. So can you tell us a little bit more about then connected riding?
Yeah. Peggy is, a lifelong equestrian herself. And when she was living in Maine, she was introduced to the work of both Linda Tellington-Jones and Sally Swift. And so she spent many years studying with Sally and Linda, and eventually she became Sally Swift's head instructor. And she taught for Sally Swift for many years before she went on and developed her own body of work that she calls connected riding, which is based on having awareness of one's body, where it is in time and space, and the concepts of having a neutral posture, which is a posture which helps the human not interfere with the natural movement of the horse. It also helps the human's body be in a place so that it can help guide the horse subtly into learning weight-bearing postures. And Peggy then went on to develop a bunch of groundwork exercises that are very much osteopathic in terms of looking for mobility of joints, as well as based in the Feldenkrais type philosophy of less is more in terms of bringing about more range of motion to joints in the body so that the horse can learn to move and become strong enough to move in a way that makes it easier to carry the horse's weight.
Gotcha. Okay. That's very interesting. It's very interesting. Now, and I know you do a lot of teaching and lecturing on the biomechanics of the horse and movement and kind of that connection in there. So when you say that she's developed this program about or with the idea of helping the horse to learn how to move better, how does that work? How do we teach? And I know we're kind of jumping ahead here and getting a little bit deep, but I'm sure there's other people out there listening right now wondering, how do you teach a horse to use themselves that way?
I think one of the primary principles is to help a horse come into a mindset, meaning helping horses work from the parasympathetic nervous system, which is why Linda Tellington-Jones's work is such a nice marriage with Peggy's work, because Linda talks a tremendous amount about facilitating a learning environment so the horse can learn. And I think all great equestrians know this, that in order for a horse to learn, it must feel safe and relaxed in its mind and in its body. Once that's achieved, and you have specific tools and techniques to help the horse with its spinal alignment, then the horse is able to engage certain muscle sets to build strength so that it can develop the carrying ability to have a rider on its back. So that over time, as the horse becomes more educated and stronger, then the horse has a better chance to have not only a more healthy life, but a more vital life. And I know that sounds very philosophical, but really that's the end goal. And something that one of my other teachers says that I hold dear to my heart, and that is Manolo Mendez, who I think is one of the most fantastic horsemen that we have on this planet today, is he will talk about the importance of a movement such as shoulder in. But he also explains that I might teach 100 horses shoulder in 100 different ways. But at the end of the day, it's still shoulder in. Okay. So that ability to shape the horse's spine so it can come into a weight-bearing posture can only happen when the horse is operating in relaxation in the parasympathetic nervous system, which then leads me back to why it's so important to have tools in your toolbox by many different instructors throughout the industry that can help facilitate that type of relationship with your horses.
Sure, because like Manolo says, 100 different horses, they're going to need 100 different, potentially 100 different interactions to help them get into that mental state, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Can you kind of distill that down a little bit for us? Can you simplify that for us?
In its simplest terms, I'm going to reference Linda Tillington-Jones again. Linda says when a horse is operating in the sympathetic nervous system, if you can think about your horse as having two different networks, wiring networks within its body neurologically, even though there are more. We're just going to simplify and simplify to the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system.
Okay.
In the sympathetic nervous system, Linda Tillington-Jones will talk about the horse exhibiting behaviors which fall within the 5 F's. 2 of them most horse people have heard: flight or fight. The other 3 are freeze. Imagine you're walking in the woods, you hear something, it freaks you out, you stop, you hold your breath, you freeze.
Right.
Horses do the same thing. Then there's also fidget. We see horses that are nervous, that are fidgety. Okay, so this is an example of horses operating in that fight or flight mechanism. And the last F is faint. So if you watch wildlife, right before the gazelle gets eaten by the tiger, he faints.
Yes.
And, we can see that sometimes with horses. The first time they get to saddle, they lay down.
Yes. Right.
The tiger's on my back. It's eating me. I'm just going to lend over to the experience. So when horses are operating in that sympathetic nervous system, they have a tendency to become, or they are, more reactive. Hence, they're not really in the state of mind that promotes learning. So in the parasympathetic nervous system, this is where, hey, we've had a glass of wine and the whole world is great and my digestive system is working wonderfully and I can sit down here and listen to this interview and really take this information in. So the parasympathetic system is the part of the nervous system where everything is A-okay. Everything's cool. Everything's chilled. Here, let me savor my bit. Here, let me relax my body. And, oh, wow, when I'm relaxed and I'm zen and I'm chilled, I can really learn. So those are, a gross description of the difference between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay. So those 5 F's, fight, flight, freeze, fidget, and faint, those we see in the sympathetic nervous system. And then the kind of openness to learning and relaxation, and maybe we might say curiosity, lives then in the parasympathetic.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. So now the $100 question, maybe of the evening: how do we access the parasympathetic nervous system?
Oh, that is a great question. And again, I've learned a lot of tools from so many amazing teachers. But this particular question, I like to come to another one of my teachers, Mark Russell, who we unfortunately lost. Great horseman. And that is, Mark taught something that he referred to as educating the horses to the bridle. And this was first talked about many years ago by a French classical master named Bochet. And if anybody is familiar with Francois Bochet, he's going to talk about things such as jaw flexions. And that can be described biomechanically in a very intimate way, in a very intricate way, that we probably don't have time to talk about so much tonight. But I'll give you the rub on it.
Okay.
So the bridal work that Mark teaches, he talks a lot about when you're educating the horses to the bridle, as you have a soft feel on that inside rein. The only thing that we are trying to communicate to the horse through the bridle with that inside rein is to A, release his mouth, or to softly work his tongue as if he is savoring the bit. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. Oh my God. He just ate the best piece of chocolate in the whole world. That is what the bit is supposed to elicit in the horse's mouth. It is an aid for relaxation. So Mark would teach his students the inside rein is there to help the horse release his tongue, which, if you think about the kinematic chain, that is releasing the highway bone, which is attached to the temporalis bone of the skull, which is the upper portion of the horse's TMJ. So once the horse is soft in the mouth, he's working the tongue, he's softening the highway, he's releasing tension in the TMJ, then the cascading effect of that is that he will be able to release at what's referred to as the atlanto-occipital joint, which is the joint between the skull and the first vertebrae, the atlas. And the movement that he will make there is that he will make a slight side bend to the inside. Now, when the horse has all of those things happening pretty much simultaneously, what he will do is he will release any tension that he has in the top line. And that will allow him to release laterally, and then he can stretch down longitudinally. So you have a horse which is able to bend to the side and also to round his back. Those two things are what Mark was teaching us with his bridle work. And if you can teach the horses that, or educate the horses to the bridle in your in-hand work and apply that to your gymnasticizing, the horse then has the ability to learn, to be soft, to be relaxed, to be operating in the parasympathetic nervous system, so that we have the ability to help that horse make changes to the shape of his spine so that he can then better carry weight.
Gotcha. So then the releasing of the jaw and the atlanto-occipital joint, which I think kind of commonly gets mistaken for the pole, right? We hear people refer to flexions of the pole, and really I think that's what we're talking about, yeah?
Yes, that is correct. And that's what really gets confusing in the literature, because at the pole, if we are considering where the skull articulates at the first cervical vertebrae, or where the skull meets at the atlas, that is what's referred to as the pole. Now that joint can either flex vertically, meaning he will bring his head more on the vertical, or that joint will allow the head to slightly create a side bend to the inside of the circle. So, for example, when the rider is riding in a lesson and the instructor says, I'd like to see the corner of the horse's inside eye, well, the horse has to make a movement at this AO joint in order for the horse to produce that gesture. So when the horse gives a side bend at the AO joint, he will also soften and lengthen the outside of his body while he creates a bend. And there's lots of different things that also go on here, but that's what's happening at the front of the horse.
And so that's a great kind of starting point to access then the parasympathetic nervous system.
That's right.
Okay.
Because it releases tension. If you think about savoring the bit, right? Okay. So everything, you're happy. So, I'm happy. I'm going to eat, right? You want to eat when you're happy. Things are good. Life is good. You want to enjoy this nice meal. You want to enjoy this piece of chocolate cake, right? So you're relaxed and you can eat that food. See, when a horse is not relaxed, he tends to tense the jaw, right? Yes. He tends to clamp his jaw together, right? So he's no longer savoring the bit. However, he might be chomping the bit, which is a nervous response or reaction to something that is making him uncomfortable.
So would you say that becomes, within Linda Tellington Jones' 5 Fs, that becomes kind of a localized fidget response?
That's right.
Okay.
And Mark would very frequently say, most of the literature that we read talks about riding the horse from the back to the front. And I think we can all agree that it is the horse's hindquarters that is the engine. It's what produces the energy. But what the classical masters also realized is that if the structures of the horse's head and neck are soft, then you have access to the horse's hindquarters and can ride the horse then forward. And Manolo works in a very similar way, but with a very different approach, because he works so much with the cavathon, which will help the horse bring his spine into alignment. Like he oftentimes will use the analogy like pearls on a necklace. You want all the vertebrae to follow that very first vertebrae, which he so beautifully does with his in-hand work with the cavathon. At the end of the day, all of these great riding masters are all working towards the same thing. They just might have a little bit of a different technique or a little bit of a different approach. For me, I use biomechanics as my floor plan. There can be more than one way to roam. As long as it is in alignment with biomechanics, I'm okay with that.
That makes perfect sense. I like the pearl necklace analogy. That makes a lot of sense. I think we can kind of get the picture of that. And so he's talking about the vertebra through the body, right, through the spine.
Exactly. Sometimes Manolo will also say, do you remember those? I'm dating myself a little bit here, but remember those train toys that there's the engine and then all the cars follow behind the engine.
Absolutely.
And then there's a string, and you can pull the engine by the front of the engine, and then all the cars will follow. And you can create arcs, and you can do serpentines, and all those cars will follow the engine. He often uses that analogy when you're working with the cavathon, that the horse will follow that nose and allow his spine to come into alignment. But if you pull the horse from the side, or you pull, which is a bad word, if you pull that engine from the side, it'll pull the engine over and it will derail all the cars.
Yes.
So when we're working with horses, when we're riding horses, when we're training horses, we have to remember that what we're working with is spinal alignment.
Mm-hmm.
We pay a lot of attention on what's happening to the legs, but what's happening with the legs is a byproduct, or at least it should be a byproduct of what's happening with the horse's spine.
Mm-hmm. Sure, because the legs aren't even going to work properly if the spine isn't working properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that comes right back then to the parasympathetic nervous system, in that if he's tense and tight, there's going to be kind of a kink in the hose, or a twist in the pearl necklace, right? And
absolutely. And Mark would talk about that as well. I think that was one of his gifts that he taught his students, was that we're really working with energy here.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, if you have a kink in the hose, you're not going to have a free flow of energy, and that energy is not going to be able to recycle in the way that we want it to recycle from the horse to the rider and back to the horse again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to think about it. Maybe a little more challenging when we're actually working with it, right?
Right, and that's why, like, people who say they get bored with horsemanship, like, my goodness. Like,
right, how?
I mean, yeah, right? Like, I can talk about theory and biomechanics all day long, and everybody wants to know how. I said, well, that's what you spend the rest of your life learning.
Right. Exactly.
You learn how, and what's good for one horse isn't always good for another horse, and what's good for one human isn't always good for another human.
Mm-hmm.
So, the possibilities are really endless.
Yes. So, and I love the way that you said it, that the biomechanics becomes the floor plan, and everything else needs to be built with an alignment of that. That to me makes perfect sense, because if you're trying to get something accomplished, but you're working then against the biomechanics, well, you're not going to get it done, or if you do, you're not going to get it done in a way that's suitable for the horse.
Absolutely. It's the foundation.
Yeah.
And, if you don't have a strong foundation, when we think about that as an analogy, that can go wrong in all kinds of not so happy ways.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. Okay, so let's jump back on track here then. We'll put our train back straight and follow the nose. So Peggy, and then was it from Peggy then that you found out about or learned about, became involved with Manolo?
Oh, that's a really fun story. I was a working student for Peggy when she lived in Oregon and in Washington. And at the time, I became ridiculously obsessed with Iberian horses.
Hmm.
And there was a woman in...
I can't imagine why.
I know, they're so dreamy. So you can hear my obsession. So when I was in the Pacific Northwest, I was taking care also of some Iberian horses for a woman who had her horses on the island. And while I was there, I had met one of her clients who had purchased one of those Iberian horses. And at the time, I was also doing my graduate work at the university. And my primary focus at that time was how movement patterns affected muscle development. So, for example, when horses move in a healthy posture, their muscles develop in a characteristic way. If horses move in an unhealthy pattern, muscles will develop in another characteristic way. So I was explaining this to this client who had purchased one of these Iberian horses, who happened to be from California. And she said, there's this amazing man who talks about the neck. And because you're localizing your research to the horse's neck, I think you really should come down to California and watch one of his clinics. I think you would be blown away by this guy. And sure enough, in 2005, I packed my little bag and I traveled to California, and I attended a Manolo Mendez clinic, and I was just absolutely blown away at his ability to help shape horses in such a kind and correct way, and how many different ways that he could do it. And so then I became a Manolo junkie. And it was just such a great marriage, between everything that I had learned from Peggy, and I had continued to learn from Peggy, and then layering that into Manolo's work was just fantastic, because they're all operating from the same place of what's good for the horse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I like, you'd mentioned that, when you were ready to learn, when you were open to these ideas, then the teachers kind of started coming out of the woodwork, as they so often do.
Right. What's that saying? When the student is ready, the teacher will come.
Right. Exactly. And I think at least on paper, as I'm taking notes and listening through the story, it seems so fitting that you would be learning from Peggy and then taking that and being more open and more able to absorb what it is that Manolo would have had to offer.
Absolutely. And because Peggy had taught me so much about how to use my body, and with her groundwork exercises, then I could take that awareness to how I started to learn about the use of the cavesson and how to use my body to learn how to use the cavesson as a tool, and then how to use the bamboo, and how to use my own energy and body to help shape horses. And I'm lucky in that I'm a visual learner, so the more I studied Manolo visually, I would start to emulate his movements, and then later I was able to put a feel to those movements.
Perfect.
But I was able to feel it because of the work that I had done with Peggy.
Yeah. So she planted the seed and he helped to add the fertilizer.
Yes, there you go.
I think it's really important what you said too about, and this is probably a little rabbit trail or a tangent, but I think it's really important what you said about you are a visual learner, and then you were able to put the feel to it. I think, and maybe you have a different opinion on this, and I'm really interested in hearing it, but I feel a lot of students that I work with, when they struggle to learn something, a lot of the struggle comes from not actually knowing how they learn best.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Again, something that we learned as instructors in Peggy's organization is to learn about your student. Are they a visual learner? Are they a kinesthetic learner? Are they an auditory learner? And to work with that student in their area that makes it easiest for them to learn. And I know that I'm a visual learner because my very first teachers, Beat Kinsel and Glenn Meyer and Joanne Meyer and J.R. Riker, they never really explained things in depth to me, but they'd always say, watch me. Watch me how I do this. And then in college, I worked for Jim Dudley, who was another quarter horse trainer, and Jim would ride with me, and then he would show me an example while he rode. This is how I do this. So there wasn't necessarily step-by-step instruction. There was demonstration, and there was emulation, and then there was a feeling. So I feel very lucky that I had those opportunities. And in the way that we are so often educated today in the horse industry, we don't always have that opportunity because the clinicians fly in, they might not be able to have a horse, or it's schooling horse there to teach. So many instructors now have to rely on verbal cues to help their students. So I think, Patrick, as you're an instructor, as I am an instructor, sometimes we have to become very creative about how we parlay the message, not just verbally, but also how are we going to help students develop a feel for something better.
Right. And I think that feel for a student can be so challenging, and it's something that one of my mentors, Ray Hunt, used to say all the time, that you're trying to do something you never did to get something you never had. Right? So it can be such a struggle there, because you don't know if you're doing too much or doing not enough, or you're doing it too soon or too late, or and so having kind of the schoolmaster horse that a student can climb on and really feel what correct should feel like, or what the right answer should feel like, I think is so helpful. And there's so many times students that I work with, and just talking with people all around the country and all around the world, there's such a lack of that opportunity. And I often wonder if that's maybe the biggest challenge that riders have in learning how to improve themselves, is that they're hunting for an elusive feel that they don't even know if they've even actually felt it yet or not.
I couldn't agree with you more, Patrick, which is why I am sending you big kudos for putting the opportunity together for people to go to Europe to ride. And I would say that Europeans do have an advantage in that they really understand that, in that there are so many riding schools in Europe that offer students the opportunity to ride schooled horses. They have the opportunity to feel the movement, to feel the softness. And only later in life do those students have the opportunity to actually train that feel into horses.
Right.
And I think in the last 25 years, our education model hasn't really served the American public in a great way, because it used to be when I was young, if you wanted to learn about how to ride better or how to become a better trainer, you went and you spent time with somebody who knew more than you did, not just person, but horse.
Right.
And somehow, maybe because we've become a more urban culture and we've let go of our rural roots, the model shifted to the clinician. And not that clinicians don't parlay wonderful information. I'm a clinician. But I also understand how difficult it is if you only see a clinician once or twice a year.
Yes.
That sets it up for a very difficult learning situation for people. And what I would love to see in this country would be to have regional schools, a school in the north, a school in the south, a school in the east, and a school in the west, of really solid school horses where people could come and develop a feel for horsemanship. It's that with your mentor, Ray Hunt, he would talk about the soft feel. Right? Well, what is the soft feel? So many people think the soft feel is having the horse, when they have a connection with the bridle or they take a feel on the bit, that the horse will just come off the bit. So they feel nothing in their bridle connection. That is considered soft feel. When in fact, when you listen and you study Ray Hunt, as you well know, when he talked about soft feel, he talked about the horse tucking the jowl under his throat. That's true soft feel. That's a lateral movement, not a vertical movement. Right. And that's that movement at the AO joint that I was talking about earlier. That is the movement that Mark taught his students, lateral to longitudinal. If I talk to Peggy, she has 2 groundwork exercises called cheek press to caterpillar. It's the same thing. Lateral movement at the AO joint to a lengthening and lowering of the head of the neck, which is a flexion of the spine. In osteopathy, we would say side bend and deflection. Manolo would say, have the horse follow the nose. Do not ever get the nose past the point of the shoulder. Otherwise, the horse is too bent. Right? So my wish for this country, and maybe someday, I would love to be able to have a home where people could come and get a feel on some school horses.
Yes.
Where they could get a feel for these things, so that they weren't trying to train the horses and learn the movement all at the same time. Feel the movement, get it in your bones, get it in your cellular memory, and then later take it to a young, educated horse and try to help that horse through different techniques that one learns from their teacher to help the horse progress in its own education.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So then that's our business model for the future, right? We're just gonna start that school.
Absolutely. So you better get to training some horses there.
I think we just need to find some sponsors for that. I think that's what we need to look for. Yeah, see if we can find some sponsors. If anybody out there is listening and they're looking to sponsor a regional school of horsemanship, you need to get in touch with Jillian and I.
That's right. And we are currently looking for a new place to house ourselves. So if anybody has any ideas, please.
There you go. Perfect. See, you had no idea that we were going to be, networking this heavily during this conversation.
Not at all.
It's always surprising what comes of these talks.
Isn't it though? But I would love to work with you, Patrick. I think we could create something pretty incredible.
I think so. And I think we're going to have to talk about that too a little further, because that would certainly be exciting stuff. So, okay, so that's how you got introduced to Manolo then. And I have Manolo's DVD, and you sure look a lot like that gal he refers to as Jillian in the DVD. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes, you are correct. And again, just incredible good fortune on my part. That first clinic where I met Manolo, I also met a wonderful woman named Caroline from Proud Horse Connection. And she had this incredible vision because she saw the brilliance of Manolo, and she wanted to make his horsemanship available to the world. And because she knew of my interests in research and wanting to become a better horse person through education and to educate, she was so kind, and she offered me the opportunity to be the student in Manolo's video, which I will forever and always be eternally grateful. Both Manolo, his wife Kate, at the time his protege Chantel Matthews, and Caroline have been so loving and so supportive of me, and I'm grateful every day for having had that opportunity.
Yeah, quite an opportunity. And you spend quite a bit of time with Manolo, correct?
I wouldn't say that I spend quite a bit of time. When I get the chance to spend time with Manolo, he and his wife have been so generous in opening their home to me, and where I've been able to spend a month at a time being a fly on the wall and just observing this master work. And as I said, that has been great for me, being a visual learner, and then him throwing a few lessons in here and there is priceless.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so now let's talk about our friend Mark Russell.
Yeah.
Where did you meet Mark? How did that come about?
Mm-hmm. So as I started to teach my biomechanic courses, and during this whole time I continued to study with Peggy as often as I could, and other people in that same vein of thought, I started to feel somewhat alone in the horse world, because I couldn't study with Manolo as often as I would like, because obviously he lives in Australia, and he doesn't frequent the United States often. So I started to look for other people, and Mark's name just kept coming across the waveline. Just kept coming. Oh, have you checked out Mark Russell? Have you checked out Mark Russell? And I was getting so excited because I started reading his book, and like, oh my gosh, that's incredible, because the way that he folded in the energy work into his work with horses was really inspirational. And I taught my biomechanics course at Mendon Fence's farm in Tennessee, owned by Linda and Vic Bertani. Amazing people, completely dedicated to education. They host Harry Whitney for several weeks every year. Linda had hosted me at her facility, and Mark and his wife Hayla just happened to live right down the road, and they both attended my biomechanics class.
Oh, wow.
So there I was, teaching and nervous as shit because, oh my God, it was like and we just hit it off immediately. His kindness, his gentleness, his depth of knowledge, not just with horses, but in life, really moved me. And we just had an instant connection on so many levels. And it was later that I was able to go to his house with he and Hayla, and again, such generosity. And they opened their doors, and they opened their hearts, and they opened their minds to me. And being the little sponge that I am, I just started to learn as much as I could. And then with my partner, Casey, and I started working at High Court Farm in Cedar Creek, Texas. It's the type of facility where we could host clinics. We thought, let's bring Mark in. And of course, it was to offer the community a wonderful educational opportunity, but there was a little bit of selfishness in there because I wanted to study with Mark as well.
Certainly. I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was very, very, again, very fortunate to have Mark move into my life at just the right time to add another incredible layer into the journey.
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I know the time that I spent with him, I treasure every moment of it, just as I know you do. And it was, there's still pieces, that every day he helps to make a little more clear.
Isn't that true? Like I hear his words all the time, and the word I hear the most is him saying to me, softer.
Yeah.
Breathe,
yeah.
Softer, yeah? And so I've even contemplated having the word softer tattooed onto my wrist so that when I'm doing gymnasticizing my horses in hand, when I look down, and I can always see that word softer.
There you go. Oh, wow.
Right. So I hear his voice frequently.
Yeah. And he was just such an amazing person that when you met him, or at least I felt, and it sounds like you felt the same way, when you met him, you knew him.
Yeah, he's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've known this person my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The first time that I met him, we were actually teaching together at an expo kind of clinic setting in Pennsylvania. And
so incredible, so wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had no idea who the hell this guy was. Yeah, absolutely. I had no idea who the hell is this guy, and I got introduced to him, and then and it was like, oh, well, he's from the moment meeting, he's a very good friend. He and Hayla both, like, oh yeah, you guys, I've known you forever, and and then thank God for Google, and all of that stuff, and yeah, I mean, just amazing. But you're right, you would have, so humble. So there was no negative ego in there whatsoever, and I think that's part of what made him so effective as a teacher of the horses and of the riders.
Yeah, and just an enormous amount of patience.
Yeah.
As well as with all my other teachers, they've just been incredibly, especially with me, incredibly patient teachers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm looking at our time here, and I know we had said that we wanted to kind of stay within a time window, and unfortunately, we are already coming close to that window. which is common for me with these discussions. I should just start making a day of them, and that's it. It's just a whole day. I think I should do them live. Just schedule them where we get together, and that's what we do. We just, all day long, we talk in front of a camera for everybody. That's what we'll do.
Well, I just have to give one more shout out, Patrick, and that's to Stephanie Milham.
Yes.
Because that was another teacher that came into my life after Mark and right before Mark ascended. I met Stephanie, and she's in the same vein as Mark with her gymnasticizing horses with the in-hand work. And again, just an incredibly benevolent teacher with tons of knowledge and no ego. And so I currently continue to study with Stephanie as well, and feel equally as blessed to have her in my life.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And we did talk about doing some question and answer, and there's a boatload of questions that have come in that would easily take us another hour to get through. And so many apologies to everybody who has sent these in that we're not going to get to, but I promise I'm going to hold Jillian to getting to your questions. I'm going to make sure she comes onto this broadcast afterwards and gets a chance when you get a chance. No pressure. I've just announced to like 5,000 people that you're going to be personally answering their question, though. No pressure.
Well, if you want to do another question and answer, I'm happy to do that after you have your other interviews.
I think that would be fantastic. I think that'd be fantastic. So you guys heard her make the offer that we're going to do just a Q&A session with Jillian. I think that's going to be amazing. But one question that I am going to let squeak through here, because I do think it's very important. Casey sent in a question. How can we find all of these people that Jillian talked about?
That's a great question. Peggy Cummings, you can check out Peggy Cummings online. Her body of work is called Connected Riding. You can look up connectedriding.com. Peggy has several certified instructors, my colleagues that I cherish with all my heart. Diane Seth, who specializes with gaited horses and horsemanship in general. Absolutely amazing human being and instructor. Another great colleague of mine who is the Connected Riding instructor, Debbie Bowerman Davies. Incredibly talented body worker, comes with a ton of knowledge in the eventing world, dressage world, craniosacral world. Also a Connected Riding instructor. I have a couple other instructors in the organization. For those of you who do not live in the United States, Mother Tranter in Scotland, a funny person, also an incredibly gifted teacher. She's able to articulate Peggy's concepts in a very wonderful way. And we have another instructor in Montana, Laura Faber Morris, who is also a Masterson Method practitioner and very involved in the teamwork, and a Connected Riding instructor, very gifted instructor. And I'm happy to say we have two new instructors, Mandy Pretty, who is Linda Tellington Jones' niece, who has just been born into the clinician lifestyle. So she is a professional through and through, great knowledge of gaited horses again, very clear, articulate instructor. And Sue Faulkner March, who is also Canadian, and Mandy Pretty is also Canadian. Again, an incredibly articulate woman, also a centered riding instructor, and just has a tremendous amount of tools that she can pull from to help riders learn more about their body and horses. So you can look all that up on Peggy's website. You can also go to Mark Russell's website, Mark Russell Natural Dressage. Hala, Mark's wife, is very, very busy and very, very dedicated to completing the rewrite of Mark's book. She's adding new information, massaging old information. She and Mark were in the middle of that project before he passed. And so she's going to be adding new information and updating that book. It is bound to be a classic hit, no doubt.
Certainly. Absolutely.
So I would definitely continue to look for that coming out later this year. And I do believe Hayla is also going to be working on more video that she has been able to collect throughout the years of Mark's teaching to offer to the public. Manolo Mendez has an amazing Facebook presence. If you go to Proud Horse Connection, that is by Caroline, or you can go directly to Manolo's website, Manolo Mendez Dressage. You can order his in-hand DVD, which gives you access to this incredible, off-the-charts Facebook group. Once you buy the DVD, you can become a member of this group, and the educational material that is shared there is just off the charts.
It is incredible. It's hard sometimes to keep up with it all. It is incredible.
Oh, it is. It is by far one of the best models that is in the industry for disseminating information.
Yes.
So that's run by Caroline and Manolo's wife, Kate. And they have wonderful contributors there. Dr. Fiona Mead from New Zealand. Also a shout out to Equinology. They do a lot with Manolo and his wife. A shout out to Manolo's protege, Chantel Matthews, who is starting her own training program. Super, super talented young woman, and sharing Manolo's teaching. And lastly, Stephanie Milham. Stephanie is a little bit more private. She does have a website. She's just starting to write another newsletter. She used to be heavily involved in Xenophon Press, doing a lot of editing for that company. Extremely knowledgeable, very humble, quiet woman. You can check her out on her internet page. I'm getting tired. Not internet page.
Her website?
Goodness gracious. You can check her website at Stephanie Milham. And she also does have some venues that she teaches in consistently at our dear friend's farm near Dallas, Texas, Javette Wright, Firehawk Ranch, and Lance, who does a wonderful body of knowledge working with horses called Flow. Patrick, that might be a really good interview for you to follow up on. They just hosted Magdalene and Federico Cavalia. But Stephanie teaches there probably 8 times a year, and I believe she also teaches several times a year in Colorado. And then I'm a spoiled little brat because she does make time to come and teach me privately here at the beautiful High Court Farm.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So those are our leads, and then of course Linda Torrington Jones has a plethora of information out there available to people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into our wrap-up questions. Okay, so if there is one specific thing that you would recommend that riders focus on as a way of improving their horsemanship, what would that be?
Awareness of their own bodies and awareness of the horses' bodies. And I'm probably a little prejudiced here because I see the world through a biomechanic's eye. But what biomechanics has done for me, both for horse and human, is that by understanding the human body better and understanding the horse's body better, that helps riders make discerning choices about what techniques and training modalities that they apply to their horses.
Yes. Well, like you said, that's the foundation. That's the floor plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right. If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who and why?
Oh, Patrick.
First one to pop into your head.
Oh my gosh.
I have a feeling you're going through a mental Rolodex right now.
I am going through a mental Rolodex, but there are a lot of people that I have a high amount of respect for. In terms of training, I would, if I could, spend every moment I could with Manola.
Nice.
In the way that he trained horses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. All right. What is your current personal definition of horsemanship?
Again, probably piggybacking on the first question that you asked me, I would say horsemanship involves awareness of what's good for the horse, physically, psychologically, and spiritually, as well as the human, in terms of taking care of our own bodies, our own mind, and our own spirituality. And as Peggy would often say, she says, so many horsemen will spend their last dime on getting body work or tack for the horses, but they will not spend it on themselves.
Yes.
And we have to remember that it's a partnership.
Exactly.
And it's like calling the kettle black, right? Because it's still something that I have to work on myself. You know, I'm not always the best to myself, and I'm fully aware of it. But really, I mean, I think to become a really good horseman, it's about awareness of both horse and human.
Yes, so true. So true. Well, that's why we don't just call it horseship, right?
Yeah, I love that. Awesome, Blossom.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so what book are you currently reading or have you recently read? Because I know you've got the suitcase full of them like I do. But what one are you currently trying to read or did you recently read?
Well, I have this terrible habit of starting like several.
I don't know anything about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Like overstimulated. I'm like, oh my God, I can't take that in right now.
Okay, what 7 are you currently reading?
Well, I just discovered that Kreinbring Gymnasium of the Horse is available through audiobook.
Yes, it is.
So I have currently downloaded that, and I listen to it as I am grooming the arena with the Little Ford Jubilee and the TR3.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
So I'm hot and heavy in that, which I think is just really cool because there's so much of a historical account in that book. It's both interesting from a horsemanship perspective as well as a historical perspective.
Yes, absolutely. That's one that I have queued up as well. I've got 6 or 8 different ones that I listen to on repeat as I drive from one side of the country to the other.
I know, and then I'm like, oh, look at that, and then I like read the whole chapter.
Right. Well, thank goodness that we can re-listen.
Oh my God, I've been listening to this for like 45 minutes, and I have no idea what he just said or what she said.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
That is a great one, though. I recommend that for everybody as well. That's a great one. Okay, so we talked about how folks can find your mentors and the other folks that you work with. We really didn't spend any time at all talking about what you're teaching and where you're teaching and what you're doing and things like that. So I'm going to make sure that everybody knows they have to find you on Facebook through JK Inspired and also through your website. How else can folks find you, or what's the best way for folks to find out about you and what you're doing, and how can they reach out to you?
I am the luckiest girl in the world because my partner, Casey, is a contact person for me. She is totally amazing. She does my calendar. She answers so many of my emails and my calls. So most likely, if you email me at jkinspired or info@jkreinbring.com, Casey's going to be the first person who sees that. And that's a wonderful way to contact me. Otherwise, you can check me out on the internet or on Facebook. I don't have as strong of a Facebook presence as I should, but that's hard to manage because I'd really rather spend my time on a horse or with a horse. So
Yes.
I'm not as plugged into social media as I should as a businesswoman. I'm just not willing to give up my horse time to do that.
Well, we're going to talk about that after, too. We're going to work on that.
Yeah. It's a hard one to film. It really is.
Absolutely.
Really, Casey Jones is my contact person, and I think she's going to be somebody you're going to interview here sometime in spring as well.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to my chat with Casey as well. Absolutely.
Amazing person, amazing osteopath and trimmer and organizer for me. So she's my first person that if you want to get in touch with me, you'll probably talk to Casey first, again, either through email or through the website or through Facebook.
Yes. Perfect. All right, and I'm gonna put in a little plug there because I know that you're not really gonna put in the plug for yourself because that's how you roll. I get it. It's okay. I get it. But I feel so fortunate. This maybe is good or bad to say. I don't know that I had a clinic of my own cancel on me at a fairly last minute last year. And that was the first opportunity that I got to actually meet you and spend time with you during your course, during your lecture that you gave. The Understanding Equine Movement to Realize Your Horse's Potential course. And I'm pretty sure I've recommended that to everyone I've ever met in my entire life at least 15 times. It's for, and I have to say this because I know that Jillian won't say this, but it's an amazing course and I recommend it to everyone. It's something that I think, again, I'm a little bit of a nerd and I do totally believe that the biomechanics has to be the foundation for all of it. I love the way that you said that. But it's a course that everybody should take. I think you should have to take it if you have horses or if you have an interest in them because it will change the way that you look at the horses. It will alter the way that you ride. I promise. And, you know, the 17th time you take it, maybe you'll be able to absorb everything.
That's sweet, Patrick. Thank you.
Well, no, it's absolutely the truth. And I look forward to taking it several times if I can have the opportunity to do that. So I really look forward to doing that again. And, you know, I look forward to just running into you again and having the time to just visit, you know. Yeah,
me too. I really look forward to that. And I should mention that in April, I'll be speaking at the American Hope Conference Association as a speaker, which is an honor. And then from there, I'll be speaking at Equine Fair in Ohio. And something that I'm super, super pumped about and excited about is in May, I'm going to be teaching alongside of Ivana Ruddock during the Horse Race Expo in Cape May. And that is going to be just a wonderful experience. Even though I'm teaching, I'm also just so excited to be learning from Ivana. She does amazing horse dissection, so clear, so precise, and such a nice person. And it will be hosted at an incredibly beautiful facility in New Jersey. So I'm not sure if the clinic is full or not. If not, if you can get on board there, it would be really a wonderful thing to experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations, absolutely, on all of those. That's going to be fantastic. And now I'm thinking I might try to scratch a clinic so I can go to the Equine Fair too and see you.
And another really fun clinic this year. I mean, I have lots of clinics. You can check them out on my website to see what the calendar is. But we're trying a new format at Menton Simpson's Farm with Linda and Vic Bertani, doing more of a comprehensive course, like a 4 or 5 day course, which I think really helps people learn because they have the continuity. And it'll be more of a family format. We won't take a lot of students, so it'll be a lot of hands-on, just more intimate, chilled. They have an incredible facility. You eat together, you get to sleep together, you can play horses together. And Linda and Vic also host Harry Whitney for 6 weeks out of the year, and they just do a fantastic job.
Wow, that sounds like a fantastic opportunity. I hope that some of our listeners definitely go hunt for that information and sign up for that one. I guarantee if I had the time, I would be there for that as well. So that's fantastic. Awesome.
Someday we'll hook up, Patrick. I'll get to one of your clinics.
We will make it happen. We will make it happen. But, I mean, we have to plan for the schools that we're going to be starting. Here, Steve. Let's do it. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so Jillian, one last thing before I let you go, because we're riding the edge of that time that I promised we'd stay within here. Every episode, at the end, we ask a question of the day, and this is a question that the listeners have to answer. The catch is you're the one that gets to ask the question of the day. Doesn't matter what it is. What's our question of the day?
What can you do for yourself to make you a better person for your horse?
I absolutely love that. What can you do for yourself to make you a better person for your horse? Gang, you heard the question from Miss Jillian Kreinbring. Please be sure to give us your answer there. I'm looking forward to the answers, and I'll make sure that we forward them on to Jillian so that she hears those as well. Jillian, thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Patrick. It was a total honor, and I so look forward to our future gatherings together.
Absolutely, as do I. And
thank you so much for what you do for the horse community. It is greatly appreciated.
Oh, and you as well. So I'm looking forward definitely to not only to the chance that we get to hang out together, but to our next broadcast, that we make a big Q&A broadcast that I think we're going to get flooded with. So that's going to be so much fun. I know it.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jillian. You have a great evening.
You too. Good night, everybody. Have a good one.
Okay, gang, thank you so much for lending Jillian and I your ear and for tuning in to episode number 25 here of Talking About Horses. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share. Your word of mouth is the feedback that fuels this fire. Make sure you tune in next time, gang. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.